remember Howard Gray when you went to school?
I'm a little boy with glasses, when they call me a little girl who never smiles. I've got
Whoa, wait a minute, man.
I know.
That's the end of the message. Bear with me, folks. You pray for me if you want to.
But I knew, put the whole Gray family down. They were the poorest family in that little country town. Howard always looked too big for his fun ragged clothes. The kids all laughed at him. Jimmy Jones thumbed his nose. Howard sat across from me in 7th grade at school. I didn't like it much, but Mama taught the golden rule. So when the spitballs flew at him, I never would join in. I guess that was the reason Howard thought I was his friend. And after things would quiet down, sometimes I'd turn to see the grateful eyes of Howard Gray looking back at me. Howard Gray, oh Howard Gray, somehow they got their kicks out of treating you that way. Deep down, I kind of liked you, but I was too afraid to be a friend to you, Howard Gray. One day after lunch, I went to comb my hair and saw they had Howard pinned against the locker in the hall. They were poking fun about that hole in his shirt. They had his left arm twisted back behind Tim's shirt. To this day, I can't explain it. I won't try to guess just how it was I wound up laughing harder than the rest. I laughed till I cried. Through my tears, I still can see the tear-stained eyes of Howard Gray looking back at me. Howard Gray, oh Howard Gray, I can't believe I joined them on treating you that way. I wanted to apologize, but I was too afraid what they'd think about me, Howard Gray. From that moment on, after I made fun of him, he never looked my way, he never smiled at me again. And not much longer after that, his family moved away. That's the last I ever saw heard of Howard Gray. That was 20 years ago, and I still haven't found just why kick a brother or a sister when they're down. I know it may sound crazy, but now and then I dream about the eyes of Howard Gray looking back at me. Howard Gray, oh Howard Gray, I've never quite forgiven us for treating you that way. I only hope that somehow you'll hear this song someday, and you'll know that I'm sorry, Howard Gray. We'll probably never meet again, all I can do is pray. May you and God forgive us, Howard Gray.
Person that he talked about, that he looked back and She was laughing like the rest. She made it a mission to search for Howard Gray. And she looked, and it took years, but she found him in Chicago, living in poverty, living in a bad section of town. She delivered and knocked on the door and got the forgiveness of Howard Gray. That's how long it bothered her, because she was part of that. In every community, not just little towns. That's what I'm talking about today. Some of you can remember being put down. I know you can. In a group this size, you've had to have had experiences, and most of it happened at school, but still, the adult workplace is full of put downs too. It's full of teasing. It's target. There's people in every adult workplace that get targeted. You don't have to tell me about it, but I know. And you know, but years ago, we used to tease people. But we stopped. When it got to the point of really, we always said there was a limit. Today, there's no limits. There's no limits. It's just pulverizing. And today, I'm going to talk about, the message is entitled today, My Starfish Journey. My Starfish Journey. And people wonder, well, you're really into this starfish stuff. Yeah, I am. Because it changed my life. In 1989, I went to a workshop in Mount Lebanon, and I stayed at a motel for 7 days. I just signed on because they needed an extra person. It was a high school program, but they needed an extra person, and I worked and coached in the high school, so I went. Thank God I went. I went because they needed me. But I was there, and you know what? God, that was a divine appointment. I come out of that week a changed person. We went through we got a $250,000 grant at Carn City. That was huge money. That was a lot of money. But the interesting part was that they weren't giving it to the school board to disperse. We got our group that they trained got to use it. It was like an account in a bank, and you drew on it. And there's about 4 groups of about 30 people representing Carn City. There were a couple other groups there from other schools. But before we were allowed to literally leave, we had to have a plan that they approved of. Okay? Some days, folks, I'm not kidding you, we were still working. We'd start at 8 every morning, and you had to be at every workshop. You missed 2 workshops, they sent you home. Okay? So I knew that they weren't fooling around. Of course, $250,000, they wanted accountability, and I don't blame them. So there were times when we were still working at midnight, getting our plan together. And that plan changed Carn City High School. It did. We come back with a peer leadership plan to take kids, so many kids in the fall and so many kids in the spring, to a church camp. We went to Crestfield inside of Slippery Rock, on Slippery Rock Creek. Had a lot of fun in the creek. We took a canoe ride. The kids decided they'd just flop out of the canoe, and they let the canoe get down the creek. I had to get down about 3 miles and get the canoe. And they were just laughing, but that was funny afterwards, but not when it happened. And we went for 10 or 12 years. 100 kids a year got trained to be Starfish kids. And these kids were from every known group in our school. The loners, the geeks, the skaters, the jocks, the class presidents. Every once in a while we'd get a court adjudicated kid that we had to take. We weren't geared for that, but we took them. We took the kid that had found with a gun. In those days, that was unheard of. And the little boy, he was about yay high. And he had a gun, and he forgot to take it out of his backpack. And they found someone snitched on him, and rightly so. So he spent about 3 or 4 months out of school and came back to school, and we took him. We had to take him. I took him out in the woods, and I said, Paul, if you mess this week up, if you mess us up and you misbehave, you're in trouble, boy. That wasn't starfishy stuff. That was telling him, I'm going to take care of you. You're going to behave. He get up, I remember, and he said, I know you people are scared of me. I know you know what I did. See, we had community meetings twice a day. And the kids would sit in a circle, 40 or 50 kids, and they would share their stories, whatever they wanted to say. So near the end of the 3-day training, he'd get up and said, I want to tell you why I had my gun. My dad beat on all of us. And my dad picked on my older brother so bad that he killed himself. And he said, you know what? I then was the oldest, and I thought I had to protect my family. So I got a gun and hid it under the porch every morning when I went to school, picked it up in the evening when I came home, and protect. I was going to make sure he didn't beat on us anymore. He was the defender. And he said, and he told the rest of the kids, that's why I did it. And he was crying and he had tears coming down his eyes. And kids get up and hugged him. And you know, kids would go home and say, Mom, they were the good kids. They were the popular kids. They were the star athletes. They would go home and say, I had no idea. I had no idea this was happening. No, I have a clue, Mom. And the one mother come up and said, do you know what I got? I got a spontaneous hug. Do you know how long it's been since I got a spontaneous hug? And he said, thank you, Mom, for the home I have. And this boy and I became really good friends. And if I had not heard his story, when he first come there, I was afraid of him myself. I was afraid of what he was going to do. But I didn't hear his heart story. So we trained, let's just say 80 kids a year for 12 years. Do the math. And they come back and they helped their school. And we went 17 years without a suicide. Because we had kids helping kids. We had kids reporting out. It was safe for them. They could tell and not get in trouble. They could tell and not be a snitch. And I knew that the workshop was about prevention. How do you prepare a kid so that when the drugs become available, and they are anywhere, anytime, you can get them anywhere, that they'll have some refusal skills and some skills to say no. How about that wonderful program, Just Say No? How many of you growing up just would say no? You remember your peer pressure. Remember your life. You know one thing you adults ought you should, and adults should never lose their memory. You were 16, you were 17. How hard was it in school to say no? How hard was it that first night you went out, and that first cigarette, and that first beer, and that first National Geographic magazine? How hard? Just say no. That was about as empty as you could get. Just say no. Huh? And you know where that come from? Washington. I came out of a presidential wife of a president. Just say no. And kids are saying, try it. Try it, adults. How many of you remember the temptations you had? How many of you remember being the target? How many can tell me a story? And you know the time, the grade. I'm telling you, folks, I did adult workshops with PennDOT workers, and they were building bridges and roads, multi-million-dollar projects. And every once in a while, I would do this. I said, you guys, you're going to be successful in your project. You've got to be kind to each other. You can't be calling people names. You can't be slamming anger. It won't work. You're wasting. You want to know how to have better time? Get rid of that stuff. Get rid of the name calling. Get rid of the anger, and you'll have a successful project. And this civil engineer, this girl that was, whoa, she had a big time job in this project. And we were talking about this object. She said, you know, she raised her hand. She said, Mr. Barger, she said, I was in 3rd grade. I couldn't read. And the teacher, I got under the desk because I didn't want to be teased, and I couldn't read it. It was safer for me. And you know what the teacher said? That's a good place for you. Just stay under the desk and don't disrupt reading class. That's a wonderful teacher. And I'm not here to slam teachers. Look, nobody is more of a teacher builder-upper than I am. But I also know within any profession, there's some teachers that shouldn't be teaching. The bullies, they're having enough trouble defending themselves against each other. But when you get a person that's supposed to be my role model, that's supposed to be helping me, that's supposed to be supporting me, and they're putting me down, how do I, and they got a union, they got protection. How am I supposed to deal with that? Now, and you know, I'm not saying fire them, I'm saying get them some help. Help them be more tender and kind-hearted and realize that you're dealing with a person with a heart. Every teacher got to understand that that person, when I preach to you, I know you have a heart. I'm preaching to your heart. This particular subject is so dear to me. I've seen the hurt. I've seen the pain. I've heard it. And this girl gets up and she said, I spent 3rd grade under the desk in reading class. I went to 4th grade, she said. Reading class started, so I went and got under the desk. And the 4th grade teacher, there's a difference you're going to know right away. She said, what are you doing under the desk? She says, well, I can't read very well, Mrs. So-and-so. And last year, I spent reading class under the desk. And she said, get out of there. Come on out of there. You know what that teacher did? She didn't treat the symptom. She found the cause. She had a vision problem. She had a vision problem, and when the vision problem was corrected, guess what? She read like a and she got up and said, Mr. Barger, I graduated magna cum laude from Penn State in engineering. The girl that was under the desk in 3rd grade, because of the kindness and foresight of a teacher. She's changed my life simply by taking the time and teaching us. They're overwhelmed. Teachers are working so hard. You want to see miracles? You want to see miracles? Go into the schools and look at what teachers are doing. They're miracle workers. But this particular girl needed a teacher that saw the problem. And you know, all this stuff that people do are symptoms of something deeper in here. Really. Really. And when you go to the doctor, if he couldn't find out what was the cause of your illness, you'd never get better, would you? But you know, and I pray that somewhere along the line, and you remember, I prayed for a custodian. Look, sometimes a bus driver is all a kid needs. Sometimes it's a custodian. Sometimes it's everybody in that school ought to be working together to help a child. To help a child. So you grow up and you went to school for 12 years, 7 hours a day, right? 180 days a year. I'll have the math. I'll tell you how many hours you're in school in your lifetime. Nothing impacts your life like those 12 years of school. Nothing. You come out of there, you flip your tassel, and you check, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. How's your heart? What's your attitude? What's your emotion? Are you ready? You know what I tell the geeks and the kids that have been put down? Go back to your 5th year reunion. And this isn't a dig on athletics, Eli, because you know I love athletics. But the kid that scored the touchdown's unemployed, and the geek is a doctor. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? There is life after school. How many of you have been through stuff and there's life after your problem? Your life after you walk out of something and you get better. And folks, we took back to the training. The first 2 years we went, that's 4 groups now. Every group of kids, what's your main problem? Put downs. I said, what's a put down? What's the things we call each other names? So I thought, well, if that's the main problem, when I went back, I got a 4-stage program. First of all, I defined put-downs with kids, thousands of demonstrations. What are they? What are the words you use? And why do we do it? What's it make you feel like? How's your heart after all of this? And then, what are we going to do to change your school, your workplace? I had it talking about, I won't mention the hospital. They called me and said, can you come in and do a little team building in our hospital? Guess what department it was, folks? The cardiology department, because the nurses weren't getting along. And they were fixing hearts up and taking care of hearts, and they were battering each other's heart. Can you come in and help us? I said, all I can do is present it, and then you got to help yourselves. Why is it so easy to put somebody down? Why is it that negative energy is so powerful? Do you know that it takes 5 to 9 positive comments to overcome one negative? So when I called that person a name, I figured, I'm just kidding, I'm just teasing. It talks about mocking in the Bible. Okay, we're going to go to some scripture. What are some of the, I wish I could do a workshop with you people, but you won't, too many of you won't talk. I need to get you in a group of about 15. The bigger the group, you know what those words were. What words did you hear in school? Did you hear jerk, idiot? Did you hear that? Stupid? Did you hear that? Oh, and you know what one of the big ones was? What you wore. And the words poor, the word braino, the word, the sexual words. Do you know one of the main things that girls get put down with? Most of the girls gossip and rumor center around sexual stuff. And once a lie gets out there, once you start it, how do you get it stopped? It's like a brush fire. And that little girl is getting picked on, and the rumors go, and the lie goes. Can a lie disrupt the church? How do you stop a lie? How do you stop gossip? How do you stop the hurt? It takes a team effort, folks. And the greatest thing about here, I don't think we have much of that going on. I'm not aware of any of that. But I know one thing, those kids going back to school, they deal with it every day. Every day. You're a jock. You're this. You're that. Because pretty soon, if you're called an idiot long enough, and a hoe long enough, and whatever you get called, pretty soon does that become a label? Does it become a label? Yes, it does. It becomes a label. That's who. I don't know you, but I know your name. I know your label. I haven't tried to understand you. I just go along with the crowd. We taught our kids at Corner City to have the courage to step out and make a difference. Go in pairs. Make a difference. Our schools need to give the kids a chance to talk and share. And teachers and adults need to listen to what they're saying. They have an intellectual world. They go into a classroom and they have math and geography and reading and this and that and other things. And you're all well aware that we've pushed everything down. We're teaching 7th and 8th graders algebra. How many of you consider yourself a pretty successful person? Pretty good, right? How many of you didn't get through math? I hate math. There wasn't a teacher in the world could have taught me calculus, geometry. Forget the angles. I had one angle. Get out. Make a right turn and get out of here. I wasted an hour and a half at Slippery Rock College getting out of a math class teacher that would have challenged me to I did some borderline things to get a teacher that gave you an automatic C if you just showed up. That's the kind of math I like. Just show up, you get a C. And no elementary major was allowed in there. But I went in and he had 5 openings and he allowed me to stay. When I first looked at the list, it was 7 over, and I said, I'm never going. It's just for phys ed majors. And I'm not downing phys ed majors. But I went back, and pretty soon this thing, and Mr. Denny got in. And I had a peaceful math year. I hate math. I can't do math. It's not my talent and ability. But see, art, the only F I ever got was in art class. And the teacher expected me to do something I couldn't do. How many remember having that special teacher that understood you, that had patience with you? I want you right now to think of the teacher positively that most impacted your life positively. Think about that teacher. Think about him or her right now. Mine was Mr. Riser. Think about that teacher. Why? Because they taught you a lot about prepositions and nouns? Because they taught you where all the capitals of the South American countries? No, because they touched your heart, didn't they? They helped you. They were there for you. Mr. Riser put his arm around me and said, Denny, you need to be a teacher. And I told Mr. Riser, I said, you don't make enough money, Mr. Riser. I'm going into business. So I tried business, and it didn't work. I went to IUP. I was going to play baseball, but that didn't work either, because I was so much in love. I wanted to get home to see my love, wonderful wife. I didn't want to miss her, so baseball went by the wayside. And anyways, while I was up there, the first year went pretty good. The second year I had to take shorthand, because IUP at that time was, you took business, but it was to be a business teacher. I lasted 1 year. There's no way I'm doing shorthand. No way, buddy. So off to Slippery Rock I went, and the rest is history, because you know what I thought when I was up in Indiana? You know what I thought about? Kept thinking about Mr. Riser. You need to be a teacher. God wanted me to be a teacher, okay? I didn't know, I wasn't asking God about things, but God was, in His sovereignty, was directing me. And in 1989, I went into a program that changed my life, and in all honesty, changed the life of a lot of kids, and changed my life. I'm far from big. You know what the biggest put down I did? You know what the biggest not listening. I didn't listen well. The kids told me, my kids told me, my wife told me. I'm working on it, but I ain't perfect. But not listening is a put down. Making fun of other people. And there's all kinds of categories. Why do we do it? Why is it so easy? Why are these kids getting put down? Why do you, okay, first of all, it's a habit. It's a habit. You want to fit in. You want to fit in. You want to get them before they get you. Okay? You're afraid to change. You don't want to snitch. There's a variety of where you live, what you live in. It's a, you know what I call put downs in this problem? It's an epidemic of social abuse. You want to improve the classroom, you want to improve your workplace, you get rid of the negativity. Every classroom in a school, the main problem is how the kids get along in that classroom. And they go there 3 or 4 times a week, don't they? And they're in, and then you're so how, and you know what kids told me, Mr. Barger, I'm so tired of hearing walk away. I'm so tired of hearing ignore it. Where do you walk? If you're in a workplace, where do you walk? You can't quit. At school, you can't leave. How do you walk away from it? How do you avoid the school danger zones? The cafeteria, the gym, the locker room area, the bus, walking home from school. You can't avoid those danger zones. So we got to equip kids and give them abilities and ways to say no and ways to get help. You want to improve schools, you want to improve your workplace, get rid of the negativity as much as possible. Get those people together and say, come on, we're going to work on this. We're going to work on this. And you know, I was going hot guns till about 2018. And then all of a sudden, no child left behind. No child left behind, and academics became the driving force of education. What percentage of kids in the school are going to go to college? What percentage of kids in school need to learn the things we're trying to teach them? Well, practicality. Practically speaking. Are we thinking of kids or are we thinking of adults? Government says, oh, you got to have results there. I got to have achievement results. You got to reach goals there. Who's winning? Who's that for? You know what? Every school in this country, if you're in the school, you're in the kids' business. This is kids' only chance at school. And somebody needs to, you know what they need? Someone needs to love them. I'm serious. Well, you love them. There's lots of ways, folks. You know, there's lots of ways to show a kid that they matter. To show a person that you matter. To show a person that I'm going to defend you. You know what I tell kids to do? You two of you walk with the person that's being picked on. And when you see the offenders that are hammering them, you get stop and get in front of them and say, hey, you give it to me because they've had enough. I'll take it. I'll do it. Be a Starfish shield. Step up to the plate. You want to hit a real home run? You want to, when you hit a walk-off hit in baseball, you got to hit the scores a run that wins the game. Oh, and they come running out and they put water on you and they squirt and they act like little kids. And all people making $50 million a year acting like little kids because you scored a run. What do you feel like when you've helped that one person that's been put down? And all of a sudden that person, for the first time in his or her life, somebody has the courage and the guts to say, you know what, I'm going to help you, man. I'm going to take the blow. I'm going to take the arrow. I'm going to be there. A little boy stood up at a workshop in West Perry High School. There was 250, 300 kids. At the end of the presentation, all by himself, he stood up. And I looked. And a lot of things happened. Wasn't in my planning. He says, I want to tell you all, and I want to tell you that I've been in this school now for 11 years, and I don't have a friend. And you know why? Because we're labeled a poor family, and nobody wants to have anything to do with me. I don't have a friend in this school. And you people, you don't know how that hurts every day. For years. And he sat back down. How much courage did that take for him to stand up in front of his peers and finally say, guys, you're killing me. I'm lonely. I don't have any friends. So they leave, and 3 girls come up afterwards, and they said, Mr. Barger, help us, teach us, give us something. We're going to help that kid. I said, okay, you realize you're going to get put down. You realize people will probably laugh at you. And these are popular kids. These are they had a different level. This kid was here, they were up here. But these 3 girls, their heart was touched. Not by me, but what a boy said. You know what? They adopted him. And they took him, and they ate with him, and they socialized with him. And they became his friends. And you know what happens? When those 3, they have a social group, right? They have a social group. Guess what happened when they come on board for him? They brought the group with them. And now the boy that had no friends, he not only had friends, he had some friends in the upper crust. He had some jocks, Eli. Jocks and stuff. Jocks at many times are at the highest of the pecking order. Now Eli wasn't up there because of that. And I wasn't either. But I was proud of being the basketball star. I will tell you that. But I'll tell you why I was. Nobody in that school worked harder than I did. I spent more time with cold hands and wet shoes than anybody. I wasn't the best built guy, I wasn't the fastest I did. I worked my fanny off to become as good as I could possibly become. Okay? But these three girls, I've never forgotten them. And I went back to that school 2 or 3 times, and they were hanging there. It happened at Clark City all the time. A little girl that Nancy and I helped raise came out. I'll tell you that thing. I'm not done, folks. You're going to get at least one more Sunday for this. And you know why you're going to get one more Sunday? I forgot a lot of notes, and I don't. But you know something else, though? I didn't really need notes for this. It was written on my heart. And sometimes, did you ever go into a store? I know it's a little late. Do you ever go into a store and the clerk waiting on you that you can perceive loneliness? Did God ever speak to you about that? Well, the next time they speak to you about that, say something, do something, just a kind word or something. You may make a total difference in that way. My wife's good at that. My wife's good at that. I'm getting better at that. I always say God bless you and all that stuff. Sometimes I need to say a little bit more. Okay? You know, I'm not even going to stop this workshop before I usually do because I'm not done. Okay? If you want a Starfish pen, if you've never gotten a Starfish pen, I'm going to close with a Starfish story and a song. A little boy, I heard this story in 1989. I guess I knew it. The little boy went to the ocean, and for the first time in his life, he noticed a starfish was so far up on shore he couldn't get back in. So the only way that starfish was going to have life if he threw it back in. So that particular day, he threw it in, and when he threw it in, he felt good in his heart. Gee, I helped some starfish. I know they're not real important, but he got a chance to live again. So he made a promise that every day he would go to the ocean and throw back as many starfish as he could. Every day up the ocean he went. And this old guy saw him one day and he came down and he said, "Son, I've been watching you for about a week now. And you're out here throwing them dumb starfish back in. Look how many you didn't get back there. Look how many there are." The little boy didn't say anything. He just reached down by another starfish, threw it back in the ocean, looked back at the guy and said, "You're right, sir, but I got that one. I got that one." Maybe every week or every day we ought to see if there's someone we can throw back. This story changed my life. A little starfish. Okay? And what movie were we watching? There were starfish and butterflies. We watched the movie and the little girl threw starfish. And of course, I love that movie. And now my battery went out, right? And you know what that starts saying? Shut up and let me go. I'm going to play a song